I think I knew at kind of a young age that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was actually a shift manager at a Dairy Queen in high school, my first job, and I found myself like looking at the P&Ls and understanding the cost of a lid and a cup and all the different ingredients, and really started noticing those kinds of things and realizing, oh, well, if we use this lid instead of the lid that's supposed to go on this, it's more expensive, so we shouldn't do that. And I just realized that I started thinking about things in a different way. And as an hourly employee, why should I care about what lid we use? But it's just kind of how my brain was already starting to think. And so I kind of knew early on that that was kind of in my blood to be an entrepreneur. So childhood, I would say, wasn't the easiest. Definitely a challenging childhood. I kind of struggle even to think of like good times necessarily for childhood. So learned a lot, and I definitely think that shaped who I am today and how I handle adversity in business and life. My mom was a very hard worker. My dad battled addiction his entire life, and so my mom worked very hard to do everything she could for us girls. And she would work third shift to make sure that she could be available during the day for us. So she would sacrifice sleep if she needed to be able to take us to and from school or to help us with field trips or whatever it was that we needed. She was always making sure that she was there and available and making countless sacrifices to be able to do that. So I think learning from her that there are, no room for excuses. Like there's no excuse to not be able to do something or to make something happen. You find a way. My mom did not go to college, and she's worked a lot of like factory jobs. She taught me about perseverance and just hard work, and that you don't give up and you just keep doing what you have to do. And so I went to college with the idea that I was maybe going to own some kind of business someday, but had no idea what that would be. And so my senior year of college, I got an internship with an online magazine. I realized I really loved digital because you had the ability to really track how things work. And you could see, unlike a magazine where you can't tell what articles people are reading or what they're interested in, where online you can see what are they clicking on, what articles are they reading. And it was fascinating to me from a consumer behavior aspect of understanding what people were consuming, why they were consuming it, and that kind of the psychology of it was really fascinating to me. So I worked for a national magazine, learning all the ins and outs of email marketing, social media, monetizing digital content. But then I started working with a local magazine and kind of helped a print magazine make their transition into the digital space back in 2008. So when this was still all really new and influencers didn't exist and all of that stuff, Instagram actually didn't even exist then. And I really helped them kind of make that transition. And in that process of working with a local magazine, I realized I really loved the local scene. I loved getting to meet local business owners, hearing their stories. There's just so much more passion involved than working with like large national companies. So I kind of took all of the knowledge that I gained from working with the national publications and married that with my passion for the local scene and launched Fabulous Arizona in 2010. And so that was kind of my baby of bringing all those passions and knowledge together and birthing that. But I knew I always wanted to grow it to something larger. Fast forward 8 years later after I launched it, and it's still just Arizona. I went full-time self-employed in 2015. So I had been side hustling this for quite a while working full-time jobs. And then in 2015, I went full-time at it because I kind of understood that it wasn't going to be what I wanted it to be if it continued to just be a side project. And by 2018, I realized, what's next? What am I gonna do next with this? So I started really kind of envisioning what I wanted to try and see if something else would work as far as expansion's concerned. And I am originally from Wisconsin, and all my aunts and uncles and cousins there were begging me to launch Fabulous Wisconsin. And so you know what? I was like, let's give it a shot. I really wasn't sure if Fabulous Arizona was working because of all the connections I had here, or if it was really that the concept was good. Obviously that fear of failure is very scary. Thankfully I talked to a friend at the time who is a business coach, and she basically was like, what happens if it fails? You just keep doing what you're already doing. And so I was like, you know what, she's right. It's not gonna hurt anything. There was, especially in my instance, there was very little financial risk in doing this. And so it was an opportunity for me to just give it a try and see if it was going to work. And thankfully it did. So when we start a new state, there's basically two components. We need to have people with boots on the ground that we can work with. So if we already have some connections in a particular state, that can be our eyes and ears locally. Well, that's always a good starting point. And then also if it's a good economic market to where there's new businesses opening and events going on and things to talk about and things that are going to be reader worthy, that is another component. So we have to kind of have both pieces of the puzzle for it to work. The other thing is obviously working in conjunction with the other states that we have. So our most recent state that we launched was Nevada, because Nevada, California, and Arizona are great feeder markets to each other. So it really there's a lot of overlap and a lot of cross promotion we can do between the states. So when I started Fabulous Arizona in 2010, Instagram did not exist. Influencers were not a thing. I personally was posting a lot on Facebook because as I was building Fabulous Arizona, I was going to a lot of events and doing a lot of things. And I feel like I was like a first generation influencer without that even being a thing yet. So I used my own personal reach and brand to try and get exposure for Fabulous Arizona as I grew that. I didn't have investors, I didn't have any loans or money to use to market the brand. So I had to just, on my own, go out to events and meet people and introduce myself and make sure that everyone knew what Fabulous Arizona was, just walking the streets myself. I was terrified, and people they see me now and they think I must be just such an extroverted person, and they could never do that because they're not extroverted. I am not an extroverted person, and I also was a very shy person. So it was a really, really difficult thing for me to do, but I had to have a conversation with myself of how much do you want this? So I basically had to put my big girl panties on and get out there and go do things that would make me uncomfortable. And I would literally be driving to events that I wouldn't know a single person there and want to throw up and want to turn around and go back home. And every time I went though, I always left feeling so glad that I did it and made new connections and started laying more groundwork. So I was always so glad every time that I did it. But it was so scary. And even now when I go do new segments or speak, I still get just as nervous. It's something that doesn't necessarily go away, but you just get more comfortable with being uncomfortable. I just don't want people that aren't in that position to think that they can't do more when that's where I came from too, you know? I think the goal for everybody should be happiness. So if happiness for you is being a stay-at-home mom, if happiness for you is, working a 9-to-5 job with benefits and a steady paycheck, if, whatever it is that makes you happy. So obviously if getting out of your comfort zone really is something that you don't enjoy and it's stressing you out, I always find joy in it after the fact. Even if it's stressing me out, I feel good about it after. So that makes it worth the uncomfortableness. And so I think everyone's different and you kind of have to weigh that. But I do think that in order to if you want to do entrepreneurship, you have to put yourself in uncomfortable positions and you have to want it enough.